All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and or persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's statement of compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's show is pre-recorded and is called "We Have the Right to Put the Banking Cartel Out of the Business of Starting Wars, Lying to Us, and Stealing." Thanks, as always, to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, Program Director, Maurice Jackson, Studio Director, and Cruce Starnes, Audio and Teleprompter. I began this series after many years of trying to deal with the mainstream media. Working in the World Bank's legal department, where I fought the deepest corruption in the world's financial system for 21 years, was another way of preparing me to represent all of the world's people as the overseer mandate trustee for the trust containing the world's monetary gold reserves and other wealth. I have a story to tell to each and every person on earth. This is a big job. Luckily, I've been willing to learn on the job and have been ready to accept help. As you all have seen over the years, I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong, and I accept feedback. That is a polite way of saying that I'm just the opposite of shy. I am now repeating the introduction to our segment from the 1st of May in 2018. I've already told you the story of how I got my father's attention when I was very young. I described this story 5 years ago in a letter to the ambassador of the South Pacific Triangle nations. And he had written to me, "Dear Karen, thanks for your funny email. I'm still chuckling to myself. That really cracked me up. I had to read it twice, in fact. However, when any Maori has a crack at you, just do this. Please find your birthrights according to our 13-month Maori calendar. It hasn't been fully released as yet, so you'll be much further ahead than any of the critics. Trouble is they don't understand the fifth dimension. Please accept this in love and light, okay?" And so I replied to him, "Dear Ariki Haremia Otimi, thank you for your email informing me that you're Ambassador of Foreign Affairs to the sovereign Squamish government of Kanata. I've heard of the fifth dimension shift, but I'm still firmly rooted in this dimension and trying to help us all strengthen ourselves and regain our health here and now. My mother just turned 90. She was principal in an elementary school. My father died 7 years ago. He was a small businessman and president of the District Grocers Association. We were quite a father and daughter team. I punched him in the balls when I was 4 because he was not taking me seriously. Honest. He just laughed, although I did hurt him, and he took me seriously ever after that time. The coalition that is now in charge. Let's start out with a 4-minute clip about the coalition that's now in charge. This is the 3rd time that we're showing this clip in this series. It was in last week's teleprompter. This past week, I reminded people that Pope Francis and the hierarchy over the Vatican, that's the secret societies, the bloodline families, the Jesuits, in short, the group that I have described many times as the head of the snake, had already tried to steal the world's wealth in the global debt facility, and that I had invalidated this attempt. The Board of Governors that manages the World Bank and IMF has fired the agents of the Banking Cartel, who do not really run the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. That's Jim Kim and Christine Lagarde. They're just impersonating the offices because the Board of Governors is in control, and we are in control. Don't be fooled about the number of people that are part of the coalition for the rule of law that's now of critical mass and working together to clear up the corruption. The counters on the internet are inaccurate. You can tell right away that this is so from the following post on Twitter Analytics. And I went back, and Twitter Analytics corrected this mistake, but it's too late. We already caught them out at it. Donald Trump is harming me and the American people with his lies and his charade. He is preventing me from mobilizing the United States monetary gold reserves during this interregnum in the legitimate government of the United States. Donald Trump is now bankrupt alongside the Banking Cartel, which is not entitled to interest on the U.S. and other countries' debts because the Banking Cartel owes us $2 quadrillion. Enough people in the military remain loyal to the U.S. Constitution and to their oaths to prevent the demise of the United States. This is also since Germany and Japan do not want the United States military to surrender unilaterally because of the unconstitutional Federal Reserve notes. A critical mass of people sees through Donald Trump's charade. This includes the U.S. military, over 70% of them, according to my information. Let's talk about an article in the Atlantic and the media. The link on the document was taken away, so I simply uploaded it again on the New Zealand digital cloud service. I also just tweeted it. It was especially telling when I confronted Elliot Cohen for his hypocritical article in the Atlantic about Donald Trump's press, his press secretary, Sean Spicer. After I called out Cohen for his hypocrisy, he revised his story a little, but Cohen still didn't tell people about the interregnum in the United States or about the global currency reset. Cohen is still a liar, caught out in his hypocrisy. Cohen did not do what he said he was going to do, which is to clarify the moment in American history for us. And I have a chart which I'm going to have to read because the teleprompter doesn't do charts. Okay, what did Cohen say? He said, kicking the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff out of meetings of the Principals Committee. No, the actual situation is that Joseph Dunford Jr. has refused the United States monetary gold reserves that General Eisenhower deposited in the global debt facility. Dunford has committed treason. A critical mass of people understands the difference between our reality and the lies of the banking cartel. Many people ask me about the timing for the fake currencies to be exchanged. Part of the exchange is going to take place in the villages and towns with local currencies that the merchants will accept in a community barter system. I'm hearing from some communities that have already established these systems. I'm also hearing back from people who retweet information about the global currency reset. The chances we replace paper currencies from the central banks with local currencies issued by villages and towns and national currencies out of the gold on deposit in the global debt facility, that's over 90%. Now let's turn to mind control. We've described the weapons that are very widespread which influence people's ability to think. Last week, I tweeted about the mind control patents. These central bank black nobility crooks are doomed. Google was created by the CIA. Mind control devices from In-Q-Tel and DARPA. There are powerful technologies that about 9 out of 10 people are susceptible to. This is why it's taking so long for the corruption in the international financial system to be overcome. The secrecy involved in the development of the electromagnetic mind-altering technology reflects the tremendous power that is inherent in it. I first learned about these weapons from targeted individuals. These are people who the banking cartel experiments on with these weapons. Then I became a targeted individual when the banking cartel tried to use these weapons on me. Even though I'm very often subject to attack by mind control weapons, I've learned how to resist these weapons. I'm fortunately one of the lucky people whom these mind control weapons never worked on that well to begin with. There's a recent development on scalar weapons, and they're also called directed energy weapons and electromagnetic low-frequency weapons. These are some of the names that these weapons go by. It's very important that you know the banking cartel is starting to develop these weapons in the mainstream media. A recent 60 Minutes show and a YouTube interview with the reporters who wrote the story for 60 Minutes was devoted to mind control weapons. This is such a big breakthrough that the banking cartel has removed all traces of my telling you about this development. I tweeted about this several times, and I also mentioned that it was an important indication that the banking cartel is falling apart. Why? Because when this weaponry is no longer secret, it can be dismantled. The way to prevent these mind control weapons from working is to discuss them with people who know you very well and request that these people let you know when they think you're acting out of character. When you have these conversations, the people operating the mind control weapons will not want to use them on you because they'll be detected. Who and what we really are. The building block for the global currency reset comes from the local communities and areas. What is at the very core and heart of the exchange of corrupt currencies for gold and local currencies, well, it's us. We're confused about who we really are. Lewis wrote me about this. Some of us know who we are. Some of the people in the medical professions also know who we are. I'll tell you more about this soon. One of my doctors is publishing a book shortly about the way it's possible to see how ethical we are just by looking at how our brains function. And a person in my Twitter account named Elizabeth Major said, yes, and learning how to relate to our communities beyond the fiat dollar. And what I tweeted and what she retweeted. Dear people, here are the first 2 emails I received from the contact page on my website after it was hacked, and my webmaster restored it. And this is what my webmaster wrote me. Hi, Karen. Thanks to God, I'm happy to let you know that your website is up and can be seen, and he gives the link, which you can get in my teleprompter. It wasn't an easy task to bring your website back. Your website was hacked, and the hacker made sure to cause serious damage. So I inspected almost all the website file to remove the hacked code. And then Lewis sent me an email from the contact page on my website on the 24th of March. and the subject was great gratitude. Thank you for your enduring labor for all humanity. I apologize for my brother humans' disrespect for you and your efforts. We both know that they, my brother humans, do not know who or what they really are. You remain in my most fervent prayers, Louis. And we're scrolling down to what I wrote back to him and tweeted. I agree wholeheartedly with Louis that we're going to learn who and what we really are. And I thank Louis for praying for me. Actually, we're all praying for each other now. There's no need for any apologies. We have to finish learning whatever lessons remain before we can enjoy who and what we really are in the global currency reset. Some of us are already starting to enjoy who and what we really are before winding down the banking cartel. The banking cartel has been up to its old tricks, divide and conquer. We're not going there. That's precisely why I say that we're going to avoid divide and conquer trick by sequencing. What I mean is that we're going to clean up the corruption and our money first before we tackle the other problems. The corruption in our money is preventing us from resolving all the other problems. And that's because it's very easy to print paper currency and bribe people. We need to clean up the corruption in our money system before humanity delves into our spirituality so that we're not victim to divide and conquer. And just think about the number of religious wars we've had. And somebody named Jeremy Vicious wrote in the comment page, is any of this linked to the Vatican, and will they be coming to take people as liens? Karen, they're trying to make Washington, D.C. into a state. Is this okay? Or should we try to stop this action? Congress is trying to push this through without making it public. Thanks for your work. And so I responded, thank you for raising these pertinent questions. The short answer is that the banking cartel and the black nobility at its center have been confusing people in their spirituality and sacred immortal souls. We are not going to get bogged down on the topic of religion or statehood for Washington, D.C. until we have cleared the world's money from corruption. Just to give you some perspective on your questions about the Vatican and Washington, D.C., please look at our January 22, 2019 show. I'm going to give you a flavor of the legal mumbo-jumbo where the bankers were hoping to get us tangled up with the Vatican and with Washington, D.C. Around 1213, King John surrendered the Kingdom of England to the Holy See under the Golden Bull or Bulla Aurea. In 1215, under direct papal authority, King John issued the Magna Carta, which is Latin for a Great Charter, and this officially established the 1 mile square block called the City of London Corporation as a sovereign entity from England and London. The religious nonprofit, the United States of America Corporation, is a closed corporation. No stock shares per se are issued. It's solely owned by the City of London and the incorporated counterpart of 1933, jointly owned by the Crown and the Vatican. It was formed to act as the transmitting utility for the United States debt after gold was eliminated, and it was reformed in Maryland in 1982 as a corporation. The Banking Cartel interfered with the archives of the DC TV series that I posted. So now the playback function is out of sync. And I'm showing you in one of the videos where that happened. And YouTube also superimposed other videos over a thumbnail that was originally tweeted. And you can see that in the teleprompter. And I also noted that Gerald Celente was superimposed over my video. And I noted that Gerald Celente is an agent of the banking cartel. Now, I have time to speak extemporaneously. And so one of the things I want to talk about is what my experience was when I was attacked by some of the scalar weapons. And I've been attacked many times, but one of the first times was really very unpleasant because they were moving my arms around without me, I was fighting very hard to try not to have that happen. And what happened was I actually ended up telling some of my relatives about this attack, and I knew what it was. But I also tweeted at the time, and I said to the banking cartel that if they were going to try to use me as a marionette, I was going to leave them to just to be attacked by all the people that are angry at them. I wasn't going to try to do anything with the world's gold and with the global currency reset. And so they never did that again. But they've knocked me down. I had an irregular heartbeat. And what happened in 2016 when I went to Canada was I think they actually tried to kill me. And when I woke up, I saw the world upside down. Now, the medical profession thought that I had just had a stroke, but no, this was an attack. And I showed you the fellow named Julius, who was trying to steal the monetary gold reserves just before I went on that trip. So, and I've spoken to a number of, they're called targeted individuals. So this weaponry is extremely powerful, but when you know it's there, it's not as effective. And a few years ago, they used to be able to attack me so that my heartbeat was, my heart was pounding, and they don't do that anymore. They my body has gotten resistant to that weaponry, or they just don't do it. But in any event, it's very much there. And the fact that the mainstream media is now talking about this weaponry is, it's an indicator that so many people know about it, they feel that they can't just keep silent about it. But they're not telling you the whole story by any stretch of the imagination. It is very, very widespread. And whenever you go into a major department store, they're trying to get you to buy things with it. But when you know it's there, you can actually do the opposite. So it's been useful. Sometimes they've made me, when I'm addressing envelopes, I've made stupid mistakes. I've left a couple of countries out, and so when that happens, I usually realize that they don't want me to contact those countries. So I go to their embassies in person. As I said, I use that. I do the exact opposite. Once I went to a conference in Australia, and they were using that weaponry on me, and they were trying to get me to like people, that they were people that, I knew that I would normally never even want anything to do with these people. So when I realized that that's what was happening, I would realize that was telling me who those people were and to steer clear of them. And when I was living in Japan in 2014, they were using that weaponry to try to get me to go to the American base. But that that would have been a very dangerous thing for me to do in Japan. And I realized, I mean, at the time, I didn't realize how the thoughts that you have that are suggested to you through mind control, how it seems like they're your own thoughts. It's very deceptive. It's very powerful weaponry. But that's what we're going to be doing in the Global Currency Reset. We're going to all get ourselves up to speed, and we're going to disarm this weaponry just by learning how to resist it. And that was also one of the reasons that I was very reluctant for a long time just to speak extemporaneously, because I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to recognize if there was a suggestion for me to say something that wasn't going to be the right thing to say. But as I said, I've become very resistant to this mind control weaponry, and it doesn't. I resist it, and when I notice it, I usually do the exact opposite, because it tells me, you can't just automatically do the exact opposite, or it's just the same thing. But you learn how to differentiate it, and that's really part of what we're doing in the Global Currency Reset. A critical mass, including the world's military powers, know about the difference between reality and the banking cartel's lies. As we learn who we are, it gets harder to manipulate us. We're starting to work ourselves loose from the weaponry, disinformation, distractions, and zero in on getting rid of the corruption in our money. This is a process on an unprecedented scale. The real question is not when it will happen, because there's so much going on that people understand change is inevitable. The real question is, can we handle these changes? That's why it's so important for us to know who we are and that we can handle it.